Well, for decades, only crackpots and crazy people believed in UFOs. That's what I thought anyway. And then in recent years, it turns out that governments have been taking them seriously all along. Very seriously.
My personal belief is that there is very compelling evidence that we may not be alone.
Unknown objects of incredible capabilities have been evading our interceptors for quite some time, and they are mysterious, and they are exhibiting grave levels of concern. So the UFO subject is important. The UFO subject is part of the media's collaboration with the national security community. And for all of these years, the mainstream media has worked very, very dedicatedly to keeping the UFO subject on the margins, on the fringe.
These newly released videos from the Department of Defense, published by the New York Times and Washington Post, part of a once secret government program to investigate sightings of so-called anomalous aerial vehicles in the skies. According to reports in the Washington Post and New York Times, the Department of Defense has spent at least $22 million since 2007 looking into UFO sightings. And now the Pentagon officially acknowledging its Advanced Aviation Threat Identification Program for the first time.
Recently, relating to UFOs, we see something new. We see the New York Times on December 16, 2017, come out with two really interesting articles on UFOs. 2 articles in one day. Wow. Both of them gave a very, reasonably positive spin on the subject. One of them stated several revelations. A, the Pentagon, for 5 years, roughly speaking, spent about $22 million on UFOs, on UFO research. And you want to know, why would they be spending money at all if UFOs are supposed to be nonsense?
The essence of the American character is to explore new horizons and to tame new frontiers. But our destiny beyond the Earth is not only a matter of national identity, but a matter of national security. So important for our military, so important, and people don't talk about it.
Basically, this disclosure thing, which is everybody is waiting for. And what I say is they're releasing stuff, yes, in drips and drabs, and this will continue probably for the next 7 years. I've heard this program will take 7 years for them to run through. And what they are doing is, people want disclosure. They want the whole answer. Tell us what's going on, give us all the details, whatever. And what they have done is, in December 16th, 2017, they basically released the first 2 videos. And what they've done is what I say is confirmation.
I think what's important is that we have identified some very, very interesting anomalous type of aircraft. Let's call them aircraft. Things that don't have any obvious flight surfaces, any obvious forms of propulsion, and maneuvering in ways that include extreme maneuverability beyond, I would submit, the healthy G-forces of a human or anything biological. Hypersonic velocities, low observability, positive lift, again, seemingly in defying the laws of aerodynamics.
You don't say who it is, you don't say where they're from, you don't talk about alien cattle mutilations, alien abductions, you just say, yes, we have a phenomena, UFO phenomena, it's for real, and we're trying to figure out what's going on. So that's confirmation. And then once everybody gets used to it, then you go to where they're coming from, that sort of stuff.
As you can see, the Pentagon is going to have to deal with some very serious issues as a result of disclosure. I don't envy them at all. People are going to be genuinely upset when they realize that they've been lied to about the knowledge that we're not alone in the universe since the 1940s.
Do you believe that life from somewhere else, while you ran this program, came here, visited, observed?
I will tell you unequivocally that through the observation, scientific methodologies that were applied to look at this phenomena, that these aircraft, we'll call them aircraft, are displaying characteristics that are not currently within the U.S. inventory, nor in any foreign inventory that we are aware of.
What would you estimate the speed?
Oh, well above supersonic. It like a bullet out of a gun, it took off.
So from what you know about aerodynamics, mechanics, physics, should this be possible, what you saw?
Not with the technology that we have today. Not at all.
Well, the secrecy has to do with the technology behind how these UFOs operate. And back when the secrecy first started, let's say in the 40s, in that era, the secrecy was because they didn't know what the heck they were dealing with, and that was understandable. By 1954, this is a very important date, October 1954, which is a year before I was born, and I'm no spring chicken, we had mastered what's called gravity control, electromagnetic gravitic systems, or so-called anti-gravity is how pop culture would say, would describe it. And actually up until that point in the literature, aerospace literature, there was open discussion about anti-gravity, UFOs, things of this sort, and then it went black. And the reason it went black in that era is that the financial cartels, mainly, did not want people to understand that we have not needed oil or gas or jet engines or these things for decades. What you're going to find is that this has been known and studied for 70 years, and that the technologies have gone through many generations of development. So the whole charade about global warming and what do we do about it, and et cetera and so on, the solution is there, but the problem is people don't want the solution to come out because it will terminate hundreds of trillions of dollars in oil, gas, and coal wealth, and the petrodollar system that the whole world has developed around macroeconomically since Bretton Woods and after World War II.
The first problem the Pentagon is going to face by disclosure is, for one thing, there will be a great disruption to world society and to the world economy. Fossil fuel will be on its way out because disclosure will inevitably lead to the advancement of technology, of free energy, 0 point, whatever you want to call it. Secondly, the free energy devices theoretically could lead to weaponization, and that's something the Pentagon is also going to have to be concerned with.
We knew, again, through intelligence and through open source material, we knew that the Russians and the Chinese and others were working on this too. The problem was that just the pop culture baggage from the term UFO, flying saucer, little green men, people don't take it seriously, but they should.
So we've ruled out, I think, that these are aircraft, experimental aircraft, or technically advanced aircraft from other countries. Is that true?
Well, no, we keep an open mind, as I say, and some of these things probably are Russian or Chinese, whoever it is, but that's the point. We must find out. If there's something in our airspace, we need to know. For years, governments said they didn't do this. They did. I did it for the British government. I can only talk about this now because my old employers are gradually declassifying and releasing information about my old job. We now know, of course, the Pentagon had a program too.
Consequently, there must be some very, very compelling reasons why the Pentagon has decided to disclose now. It could be that the Pentagon has finally come to their senses and realized that at any moment, Vladimir Putin could disclose, potentially China could disclose, or some other nation could disclose. Whatever nation discloses first will have a special status in the world, will have the greatest legacy the world has ever known, and will have greater influence because of that stature.
Or maybe there's something more going on here. Why is this not a question that the media is really asking? If you've got objects that can do what the Tic Tac object did with Fravor, and let me really emphasize this. Fravor, by his description, circles around, sees it, comes down on an intercept, it comes up and zooms off, and according to his statement, that thing was out of visibility in 2 seconds.
What would be the effects on a human pilot of the G-forces involved in that altitude change?
You know, talking to some physicists, they don't think the human body could handle that kind of force with that acceleration.
It doesn't sound like the human body could. So bottom line, what do you think this was?
I believe, as do the other folks that were on the flight, that when we visually saw it, that it was something not from this world.
Something that was described by Michele Alcubierre in his 1994 paper on warp drive, the creation of a warp drive that would not violate general relativity. one of the things that he was suggesting was that you would be able to engineer a vector or a pair of vectors in space-time that would, on the one hand, cause a compression of space-time ahead of the vehicle and an expansion of space-time behind the vehicle.
Environmental conditions that you experience inside the spacecraft are pretty much pegged to the time and place that you start out from.
So you don't have any sense of g-forces or being moved around. You don't have any sense of acceleration, because the entire pocket of space-time that you're encapsulated in is being accelerated by the vectors that are created around the system.
That tic-tac object had the ability to penetrate highly encrypted US military codes. And how? Well, it was able to be at a certain specific location where the Navy pilots were vectored to be at, and it got there before they got there. It's as if it heard the communication, which was encrypted, and was right there at the rendezvous point. And let me just say, like, no one's supposed to be able to do that. And there are a number of technical details that I've learned a little bit about in terms of the nature of these communications and just how difficult that's supposed to be. And so that this object could just, with the greatest of ease, go through encrypted communications and be where it was supposed to be, that's serious. Where is the mainstream media? Asleep at the wheel, as they always are.
So this is a huge problem. It has very little to do with the fact that there's intelligent life out there. It's a human problem of the abuse of power and the secrecy that has devolved into these unacknowledged special access projects, which are really rather frightening in how they operate. We have an Air Force intelligence officer who admits that he worked this issue, an Air Force Office of Special Investigations officer out of Kirtland Air Force Base, and that we have facilities in Nevada at the Lockheed Skunk Works and elsewhere where we have essentially reverse engineered these extraterrestrial craft that we have obtained and studied for many decades. And the military part of it is really the lesser part of it at this point. It's more the overall intelligence community and the corporate financial community that wants to keep this secret. What you find in that one account from this Air Force officer is that we were test flying one of these retrieved extraterrestrial vehicles, but we had switched out the power plant. We didn't quite know how theirs worked, with something that had a nuclear component. It malfunctioned outside Houston, and it's called the Cash Landrum case. And it irradiated all these innocent civilians on the ground as it was going down. And this Air Force officer, Doty, who was the principal investigator of this crash landing, was actually the debriefer also of the pilots, the human pilots of this object. And it came out of Nellis Air Force Base, what people call Area 51, although that's not the proper name for it. And this was a case where these civilians were critically injured with spewing radiation out of this craft. And it was covered up by the government. They tried to sue for it because there were military helicopters trying to escort this thing down that eventually did land after this core breach of the nuclear system on board. But this is a case now where we have a long-standing officer in the Air Force, a career man, admitting that this happened. He was the principal case. Now take that case, and I have 850 military and intelligence and corporate people like him in my archive now.
There will never be a voluntary disclosure of this, never voluntary. It will only happen if the powers that be are pushed to the wall, when they have no other way out. And I think that's still true. What's happening now is that in our society, we're in a very dynamic society, and there's a lot of people in this world who are interviewing other people, who are talking to everyone, and information's flowing around in ways that we were not able to do in previous generations.